talking about the Grand Canyon today and therefore the desert.
Right.
I remembered this story from my childhood that I had not even remembered until it just literally hit me yesterday that this happened. Oh. And I was like, oh, I have to tell Mike this story.
Okay.
In elementary school, I went to this little Catholic school. We used to sing this song, Peace is Flowing Like a River. Are you familiar with the song?
No.
Peace is flowing like a river.
No.
Flowing out of you and me. Flowing out into the desert, setting on a cactus spring. Anyway, so like that we used to sing that song all the time. We had this little assignment one day that was like, take a song that we sing and draw it. Oh. Which I think is a really cool assignment. Yeah. So into this idea of like draw what is like a visual representation of this song. I was so proud of this little drawing that I made. In the background was like a picture of me, and out from inside of me was flowing this river of water, like the song says, into the ground, and it flowed all the way out into the foreground of the picture. It was a desert, and then it like came up. And now I didn't exactly know what the song meant by cactus spring, but I just was like, I guess this is what lyrics are, and I guess this is poetry. So I'm going to decide that it is like a cactus needle. So the water flowed up onto the cactus needle. Right? My teacher saw it. Oh, this is great. Well done. Whatever. Hangs it in the hallway for like parent day. Right? So my mom's walking through. I was like, yeah, this is the picture that I drew. And she's like, oh, okay. Explain the cactus to me. And I was like, well, it says that in the song. I was like, it says flowing out into the desert, setting on a cactus spring. She's like, now, meanwhile, I'm like, I don't know, 7 years old. Sure. She goes, oh, really great job on this picture. And I was like, okay, is there something wrong? And then we get in the car and she's like, peace is flowing like a river, flowing out of you and me, flowing out into the desert, setting all the captives free. I was like, no, it's not. I was like, it says desert. They are talking about a cactus. She's like, not talking about a cactus, babe. I'm sorry to spoil it for you.
To burst your bubble with your cactus spring.
I believe she said, this isn't the first time you're going to hear lyrics wrong. Oh. Everybody does it. She's like, but yeah, it's not a cactus. It's setting the captives free. Oh. She's like, they're referencing this. And she's like, that time in the Old Testament where, in Egypt where they were all enslaved and like it's flowing out into the desert, setting all of them free. And
Should we just watch Prince of Egypt right now?
Right, exactly.
Looking for adventure, I want to follow on the trail, or get a little lost and let the wind fill my sails. Get up when the stars still fill the sky, don't wake the sun. There's so much to be done, and the day has just begun. Go where the postcards are real, you can feel, you can open your eyes and open your heart when you gaze at the national park.
Follow you there.
At the national park. At the national park. Follow you, I'll follow you there.
Hello and welcome to Gaze at the National Parks, the podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Dusty.
And today we are talking all about our adventure to the Grand Canyon, which was our final stop of our original national parks trip in 2017.
That's right. Before the show started.
Right.
Before we even realized that we liked going to national parks.
Or liked each other.
Right. No, I think we'd figured that one out already.
Yeah. So it's a trip we've kind of like, this is a one park we've kind of held off on talking about for quite some time, but here we are talking about our trip to this magical land known as the Grand Canyon, which is one of the most visited national parks in the park system.
It is not the most visited.
It is not the most visited.
That would be the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Because everybody goes to Dollywood after to get their
Pfizer
vaccines. Thank you, Dolly.
No. She's the other one.
Oh, Moderna?
Moderna. Yeah.
Moderna.
She's that vaccine.
Okay. Well,
thank you.
Thank you,
Aunt Dolly.
Yeah, seriously. This is another trip, oddly enough, where we are coming off chronologically the trip prior to being talked about on the podcast. So we just finished our trip in Petrified Forest and Painted Desert, and here we are headed to Grand Canyon, which is exactly how it happened in real life.
That's right.
Right.
We had left Moab, Utah, because we had been at Arches and we'd been at Canyonlands.
Yep.
On our way to the Grand Canyon, we stopped at the Petrified Forest.
Yeah, it was
and
like
the
a
Painted
surprise.
Desert. Surprise. We
mhm.
stopped there. Now we were headed to the Grand Canyon.
Right, which was our last leg, essentially, of the trip.
Right.
So we left the Petrified Forest sometime in the afternoon. We stopped at a gas station. I remember stopping, and I think you went in to probably like pee or, get a Diet Coke, probably both.
That was during that time.
Yep.
During that phase.
Time in your lives.
And I remember I talked to my mom earlier that day, and she was like, "Oh, did you get me a piece of petrified wood?" And I was like, "I can't take a piece of petrified wood from the Petrified Forest." She's like, "No, I meant like in the gift shop." And I was like, "Well, I didn't know that you wanted one." But they had some for sale in this little gas station. So I got her a piece.
Yeah, there were other things. I feel like there were like other little crystals in there too.
It was a half gas station, half
crystal
full
shop.
crystal shop.
Right. One of those.
Yeah.
We got our gas. You got our petrified wood for your mom. We headed our way off to Flagstaff, which was where we were staying as kind of our launching point for the Grand Canyon. It's about a 2-hour drive from Petrified Forest to Flagstaff.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
No, it was relatively quick compared to the other drives that we had taken on this trip. We, like Dusty was just saying, we sort of on our way from Moab and, being in Canyonlands and being in Arches, Petrified Forest and Painted Desert were sort of really a surprise. It wasn't like something we had originally slated, but we saw that it was kind of right in line there. And I think we had originally planned to, I guess, maybe spend an extra day or so in Moab area or spend an extra day at the Grand Canyon. Something we were going to do some sort of extra thing. Actually, I think what it was going to be was we were going to try to do the north rim of the canyon.
Yeah, we were going to try and do the north rim of the canyon. Yeah. One of the reasons that we, put the Grand Canyon at this spot in the trip was because you had gone to Machu Picchu.
Right.
And you had said you'd seen a lot of sites in Machu Picchu, or you saw Machu Picchu and then a bunch of other sites as well.
Right. And then I did from Peru and Machu Picchu, I did Bolivia and the Salt Flats and La Paz, and then went to Chile and Santiago and the coast.
And you said to me, you were like, all of them were so amazing to see. But Machu Picchu was just this magical experience that was uncompared to any of the other things. So you were like, because we had talked about putting the Grand Canyon first on this trip.
Right.
Going there first and then sort of making this circle back around in the opposite direction. Because we had gone Zion, Bryce, Arches, Canyonlands, Petrified Forest over to Grand Canyon.
Right.
We thought about doing that in reverse, and you were like, no, let's leave Grand Canyon for last because it is what it is.
And it's iconic,
and it's so iconic. Let's leave it for last. So we did do that.
Mm-hmm. So we spent basically 7 or 8 days prior to this already hiking and seeing this incredible landscape that is southern Utah, even northern Arizona. And so we kind of were primed at this point for the Grand Canyon. But I think we were also at this point sort of feeling a little like zapped as far as just like overload. We had visually overloaded ourselves a little bit.
I mean, we had overloaded ourselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, we were physically very tired.
Right.
Because it was just like, this was the first time we were figuring out how we were like we knew we traveled well together.
Right.
But we also were figuring out what hiking was like outside together.
Right.
Because I remember that first day at Zion, I was like, oh, we're going to be doing this all day, every day.
Right.
I better get ready. Yeah. And like, I was not prepared. Now I like know, now I'm prepared. But like at that time I wasn't.
Yeah. We make our way to Flagstaff and we end up there right around dinner time. This is also the time in our travels where we were kind of like, we don't care what we eat. And we're sort of still like that, where it doesn't really bother us. Like, if we can find a brewery these days, and I say these days, I mean, what does that even mean?
Not these exact days.
But, you know, when travel's the thing at some point again. If we could find a brewery or something like that, or something in town that is a local, like, hip little hotspot, we'll definitely do that. But we're also sort of the mindset of, we're tired at the end of the day of hiking, or tired at the end of the day of doing something. We'll just find something that's familiar. And that familiarity is the Cracker Barrel.
That's right.
Sometimes.
That's right.
Right.
Cracker Barrel did to us what it always did to us.
Magic.
Which is, a friend of mine told me about this, and I was like, that is not true. And then it ends up, at least at this point, it was true. I don't know how true it would be now. Maybe Cracker Barrel's listening, and these days they've sort of stopped this. But like, I would always joke that, like, when we would go to Cracker Barrel, we would always be put in the gay section, which is like the very far back section of Cracker Barrel, and then you would always get like the gay waiter, you know,
who's like 23, just out of college.
Who's like 23, just out of college, and his name is like
Brendan,
Caleb, or something like that, and it's like a meeting of the sisters,
right?
You know, it's like, hi, how are you? Good. I mean,
the coven has convened.
The covenant, right? Yeah. And you're sort of like, we all sort of know each other,
right?
I'm sure that some people out there are thinking like, oh, that's funny. I'm sure that's happened to you one time. This has happened at least 10 times.
I mean, I've been with you for at least four of them.
Yeah. And we're like clockwork every time.
Yep.
Every single time.
Put the gays in the back.
And I'm always curious. I'm like, well, maybe they're doing this for Caleb. Right. Maybe it's like to give Caleb some social space.
There you go.
Maybe there's that. Or maybe it's to give us social space. I don't know.
True.
I don't know.
But
it's true, and it happens.
I do know that they can just leave those biscuits and keep bringing back more.
I'm never going to complain. Because the biscuits, the cornbread, oh my goodness. So after we leave Cracker Barrel, we head up to our Airbnb, which is like, Cracker Barrel, I remember, was like a solid half-hour drive.
Yeah.
It was a half an hour drive, or like 30 to 40 minutes to where we were staying. And then the Grand Canyon was going to be like
2 hours, basically.
2 hours north of there. So we were leaving this area, which was near the university that was there, the Northern Arizona University. Like, we were leaving sort of that area and then headed up to where our Airbnb was. The
Airbnb was really interesting because I think this was one that I had booked. We had done Airbnb when we did our Florida trip prior to this, and we Airbnb'd throughout this entire trip too. And they were just super chill. Like, most Airbnbs were like, you know, you need to be here between this time and this time.
Well, especially after that one Airbnb in Moab where she had the binder of rules.
Right.
And as I maintain, everybody could have a good time because of those binder of rules. You know what I mean?
But they were very, very lax. And it was just like, oh, yeah, you know, like, whenever you want to show up, it's fine. Someone will be here. It's no big deal.
They were like, oh, we don't do keys.
Yeah.
Like, there's no keys.
Someone is always here, essentially.
And it's always open.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was really surprised with what Flagstaff was and what the surrounding area was like, because it was sort of like we drove up like into the mountain. Like, I just remember that, oh, okay, it's actually sort of, not only is it mountainous, but it's like pines and like conifers and
a little rural. Like, suddenly rural.
Yeah. It was a little like strange all of a sudden, like very abrupt, especially coming from Petrified Forest and like even just Moab, where it was much more deserty. This was a change of scenery for sure. But we basically end up in this very like rural sort of development is the best way to describe it. It was kind of like a little strange, like, we got to the end of the road and it was like, okay, there was no more road to go on, like paved road. And it was very clear that our Airbnb was kind of off to the side, off of kind of like a little bit of a dirt road that we had to go down. It is this gigantic barn looking house, essentially.
We go up and we just knock on the door and they were like, oh yeah, come in. I mean, they could like see us. And so we just walked in. Big, beautiful space. They were having dinner with their kids. Their one kid.
And they had dogs.
And
the house was really cool. It was set up like, it was a recording studio.
Yeah, right to the left.
Yeah.
Right to the left. When you come inside, just to the left, there was like a full recording studio.
Yeah.
And so we were like, oh, wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
And so, we got to talking to the hosts about this and they were like, oh, yeah, this has been a recording studio for a very, very long time.
Right.
And they turned it into a nonprofit recording studio. They started Airbnb in order to like help offset the costs for artists to use the recording studio. It was the coolest thing.
Yes. And the house was set up very much so like it was trapped in the 1960s. Like I expected the Brady's to come down the steps.
Oh, it was so...
Mike, why?
It was very mid-century modern. Everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, exactly.
Shag, like green shag carpet.
Yes.
Like wood paneled, like everything.
It was psychedelic.
Yep.
And they had like some rooms downstairs and then they had some rooms upstairs.
But I think they only Airbnb'd the one room because we were their only guest. But
no,
maybe
there were some other guests the night before that had left earlier from downstairs.
Okay.
But we were the only guests the night we were there.
Okay.
Literally, we just come from this lady's place in Moab with all of the rules.
Right.
So going into this situation was like, they were like, oh, yeah, we'll show you the room and we'll show you what's up. We walk in and there is a card on the dresser that was like, this is the Wi-Fi password. That was all the info.
Yeah.
And they were like, and here are the towels. The bathroom's over there. That's your bathroom. And we were like, great. And then that was it.
Yeah. And they were just like, again, they were like, someone's always here. So don't worry about anything as far as getting in. They had a French bulldog who wouldn't leave me alone.
Oh my God.
Who was obsessed with me.
Well, because we were sitting there and we were just chatting about, what we had done that day, I guess, and what we were, plans for the next day.
Yeah.
And then just in comes their French bulldog. And it was just like, no, I'm here now.
Yeah.
And I am part of this.
Attention.
And, oh my God, just like licks. And they were like, yeah, he'll probably come say hey and lick your face. I mean, and we were like, yes. And like what I remember was that they were labeled super hosts as well as the woman in Moab, also a super host. And I was like, wow, and this is our first sort of real consistent experience with Airbnb. And we were like, well, I guess there are a lot of pathways to superhost.
Yeah.
I was like, I love this, So,
it was great. It was very relaxed.
It's okay. I say it's A-okay if people don't have binders full of rules. Everybody's house is their own culture.
Yeah.
But something cool that they told us when they were showing us the room, they were like, oh yeah, Linda Ronstadt used to like record here all the time. She'd stay in this room. And you were like, oh, who's that? And I was like, oh, well, I know who Linda Ronstadt is because I grew up listening to Linda Ronstadt singing with Aaron Neville in my dad's car. I literally called my mom and she was like, oh, that is the coolest thing I've heard all day.
I had heard of Linda Ronstadt, but I couldn't tell you anything that she had sung.
We didn't listen to any Linda Ronstadt.
We didn't.
We could have, but we didn't.
No.
We had a wonderful time at that Airbnb and it was a lovely spot to, just rest because we were there 2 nights.
Right.
It was a lovely spot to rest, to get ready to go to the Grand Canyon the next morning. And with that, let's take a break. What game are we playing today?
We're going to play memoir titles. We haven't done this in a while.
I love this game. Memoir titles or even memoir chapter titles.
Memoir titles.
Memoir titles. Have you read that memoir?
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, memoir chapter titles is, I think, what we're going to aim for here.
Great.
So I want you to come up with a memoir chapter title that relates to a time that you worked in retail or like had an odd job, like early employment.
This would be a section and I would break it into miniature chapters.
Okay.
The first one would be called Baskets of Peaches.
Okay.
Because my first job ever where I actually made money was there was this man, this older gentleman named PJ, who went to the church that my mom and I had gone to. Every Monday, he would deliver produce and people would pay him. And so I helped him.
Okay.
Just like I delivered it from the car to their front steps. And it was mostly peaches.
Okay.
Then I would probably have to have a chapter about, working retail, but I would probably call it crop dusting.
Okay.
Okay, and here's why.
Please do.
Is because
all of the secret farts.
When I worked for a major luxury retail brand, who's part of like a larger family of stores that have like, there's 3 of them that are sort of like bonded together. Right? I worked for, the luxury tier of that. I really actually kind of liked that job a lot because I kind of just like sold clothes and like everybody left me alone and I could just interact with people. And I love interacting with people. Like that's a requirement. I would rather interact with people than like data or numbers or like, that kind of job. But there was this woman that would come in at 9:25 when we closed at 9:30. Meanwhile, we have refolded everything. And she would ruin so many piles and make this mountain of clothes and go into the fitting room. She would not ever buy anything. And some people were like, we think she might be shoplifting some things because she always grabbed things that didn't have any,
security tags
on them. We had refolded everything and she ruined like 4 tables. What can I do to motivate her to leave on time? I opened a fitting room for her and I crop dusted the worst part I have ever let out. And it was like, all I had to eat that day was like protein shakes and vegetables.
Wow.
And I was like, your fitting room is ready. She walked in, walked right out, and just walked right out of the store. I would say she never came back again, but she did. She did come back a few times. But that was how, I would have to say crop dusting. What about you?
Well, I think the first job I made money at, I worked at a fish restaurant. So I think I would call that title like something fishy or something smells fishy. And it was fine. It was for like a summer. I worked for like a neighbor in the neighborhood had opened a fish restaurant and it was small, but it was sort of like I was able to like get some serving experience and like I didn't really do cooking at all. It was like all counter work, but I just would come home and reek like every day of fish, like that smell. And so that was something that like is sort of like
to get rid of that
it's
smell.
Like a visceral memory that just like has stuck with me for a long time. And then my next retail job that I worked at was a rag shop, which is similar to what an AC Moore was and what a Michael's is now, since they are like the dominant species of crafting stores
and art supplies.
So that was great. I love that job. So I think I would call that title From Rags to Rags instead of From Rags to Riches.
Great.
Because that was like a job where it was just like you would do everything. It was like, okay, you're on cashier. Okay, now you're going to cut fabric. Oh, you don't know anything about cutting fabric? Well, you're going to do it. Oh, you're breaking stuff down. Oh, you're doing inventory like late at night. And there came the time where they used to do like make and take workshops for kids. And I think this was like, there were a few jobs in between, but I think this was when I was either just about to head to college or like in the summers between my years at college when I was home. And they're like, oh, you teach art classes? Well, we don't have like an art teacher for today. Or you want to be an art teacher? Well, we don't have an art teacher for today. So it was kind of like how I got my feet wet. I was like probably like 19 or 20 teaching like 10 or 11-year-olds how to do like a craft, which was really actually very like formative and cool thinking back on it now. But it was really like they sort of like just threw you to the wolves like all the time. But it was, I would work with literally, it was me and like every other person that worked in the store was like 60 plus. And I loved all of those women. They were great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
From rags to rags. We would like to acknowledge that while hiking and exploring in the Grand Canyon, that we were on the traditional and stolen lands of the Hopi, Havasupai, and Pueblo people. Grand Canyon was established on January 11th, 1908. So she's a Capricorn, just like somebody I know. As a national monument, and then February 26th of 1919 as a national park. So a Pisces. Ooh.
Oh.
Which makes sense. Earth
Okay.
and water.
Sure.
know?
Yeah. I mean,
Flowing
carved
like a
by
river.
water.
Yeah. The canyon, most people will go to the South Rim, which is home for viewpoints and trailheads. And there is the historic Grand Canyon Village that is there. That's also the visitor center is basically there. But the North Rim is also a very popular destination. It's only open from mid-May through mid-October. And I believe that's where the clear bridge is on the North Rim, right? I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I
The,
thought
like,
the clear bridge was closer to the South Rim.
Maybe it is. Things we didn't see. I think that throws me into a panic just thinking about it.
Oh, girl.
So I think we just avoided
Throws
it
you
altogether.
into a panic.
So we just avoided it altogether. And so, the canyon, aside from just being able to take in the sights of the canyon, there are some hiking trails. Mule rides are popular as well. There's a lot to look at the Grand Canyon, like literally.
We got up very, very early, which getting up early wasn't really a big problem for us, mainly because if you're Mike's friend, then getting up early is a requirement. It is an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm. It's true. All true things.
And so we got up and we were already packed. We hit the road. We really, really wanted to do the North Rim.
Yeah.
In hindsight, wanting to do the North Rim and staying in Flagstaff, probably not the greatest choice.
Mm-mm.
Because it would have been more like a 6-hour drive.
Something insane, yeah.
To the North Rim than it would have been to the South Rim.
Right.
Because driving to the North Rim of the Grand Canyon is from the South Rim is an unbelievably long drive.
Yeah.
So, not unbelievably long.
Just
it's
long.
a long drive.
Yeah.
So,
you're going around a canyon, man, essentially.
but it's the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
it's
the
the
Grand
biggest
Canyon.
of all of them. So,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of where are the major roadways that'll take you there the fastest.
Right.
We were there too early in the season for the North Rim to be open. So we knew that the only option we had was the South Rim.
Right. And so we were kind of like, what are we doing as far as time goes? I think that's probably part of the reason that we did go ahead and do Petrified Forest and Painted Desert. Although we did kick around maybe going to Sedona or trying to see some other sites while we were there. We had 2 days. Our flight the next day wasn't leaving Las Vegas until something like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. So we had lots of time to kind of play around with. We wanted to make the most of our time. So we kind of decided we would just play things by ear once we got to the Grand Canyon.
Right. Knowing that we had 2 days.
Right.
That we could go.
Yeah.
Prior to leaving, there was a lot of chat that we had about hiking to the bottom of the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that I read, every piece of research that I saw said, do not do this. You will not succeed.
In a single day.
In a single day.
Yeah.
Meaning, it's fine to hike down to the bottom, camp, and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
But doing it in a single day, now we weren't camping at this time.
Right.
We didn't have that in our own sort of travel infrastructure.
Mm-mm.
I had watched this video of this guy who did do it, and he was literally running most of the time. And then he did do it in a day, and even him at the end of it was like, this was a bad idea, don't do that. And I was like, well, we're definitely not going to be running.
No.
And 2, I drink water
At an unbelievable rate.
at a 2 to 1 to you, honestly.
Yeah.
That's how much water I'm consuming.
Yeah.
So
It's those extra 2 inches of height you got on me.
yeah, I guess so. When it comes to planning,
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to be in a situation where we're not going to have water, then that's something we have to strategically plan for.
Yeah.
We don't even now have that in our infrastructure to be
Right.
we have to strategically plan for not having water or only having a certain amount of it.
Yeah.
Like that is something I know that I would personally have to work really hard to work toward.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. We were like, it's not a good idea to do the Bright Angel Trail.
No.
Right? And so that's sort of where we left it.
Mm-hmm.
Was like, we know we're not doing that, but we'll see what we can do when we get there.
Right. I just remember the drive there being very beautiful and very open, just like expansive landscape. Also some snow on the ground, which I'm pretty sure you were disgusted by.
I mean, I'm always disgusted by snow.
Because we were at Hyatt. I mean, you have to think about, I just remember leaving where we were in Flagstaff and just climbing, like feeling like we were just headed up.
Yeah.
Like elevation wise.
Up and up
and up and up and up and up.
But it was not like windy.
No.
Like we're not
like
winding up. It's like
path.
a straight drive.
Yeah.
Kind of just like angled up.
Until you kind of like level off eventually. And we do, as we get closer, we get to the Kaibab National Forest, which basically takes us all the way to the canyon from there. It surrounds the canyon. We've talked about this before. Most national parks have some sort of natural barrier to them that protects them. In this case, and the case of many national parks, a national forest tends to be that thing. For Channel Islands, obviously, you have the Pacific surrounding it. This is what we're basically passing through as we're getting to the canyon. So you do pass through this kind of like one town right before you get to the canyon, and it's kind of on private land in the midst of the forest, in the midst of the national forest. And the name of the town is Tusayan. And it's basically just an island of hotels and restaurants amid the national forest. And the Grand Canyon Airport is kind of like right on the outside of town.
This was back during the time when we were eating McDonald's every morning. And
for breakfast when we were hiking. Not every morning.
Not every morning. Yes, for breakfast when we were hiking. Obviously.
We had 3 triple bypasses at this point.
We had looked up McDonald's prior to leaving the night before. There was one in downtown Flagstaff.
Which would have backtracked us like 20 minutes.
No, it would have backtracked us an hour. We would have had to go south 30 minutes and then back up.
Right.
So it would have added an hour, and we were like, we don't want to do that. And then we saw that there was a McDonald's like right before you get into the Grand Canyon. We were like, perfect. So we'll go to that one. So we go and we pull up and we put in our order, which was something like coffee and a Diet Coke. And I think between the two of us, we got like 4 biscuits and 2 orders of hash browns. And what was the total?
Like $42.
No, I think it was 50. I think it was like $52.
It was something outlandish.
And we were like, are you kidding? We were both like totally stunned.
Because our breakfast was typically like $8, maybe something like that.
Together, it was typically like maybe $8 to $10.
Right.
We were like, what? And it was like, yeah, because one biscuit is like
$30,
$6.99.
Right. Also, this is where we introduced price gouging in and around the Grand Canyon.
Goodness, this is the most expensive meal we have had that entire trip.
Right. And the most expensive McDonald's that we could probably think of.
Ever.
Thankfully, the lovely woman who was working the window was like, well, I can make these things a meal. And like, I think it ended up coming down to like $30.
I think it turned into like $38.
Yeah.
I think I remember, if my Capricorn number brain serves me well, like $38. And we were like, well, thank you so much, but good Lord.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think took a minute to be like, well, where else are we going to eat? The Little Caesars over there isn't open yet. It's like 9:00 in the morning.
Yeah, there was nothing we were like, do.
We needed to fuel up.
I was like, this can't be the only time. I'm like, this is probably every single order that the person working the window, like that's their experience every time. Somebody orders, then they're like, that'll be $47.42. And they're like, excuse me? And it's like, then they have to go back and forth over this. Right. I'm sure that's their experience.
So we like begrudgingly got our food.
We paid up.
And we headed off to the canyon, which at that point wasn't very far. When you kind of pull in, it feels very much so like an amusement park, in that there are like tons of lots. There's like RV parking, there's car parking. We parked sort of towards the back of one of the lots. The nice thing about the canyon is it is long. Like the South Rim is long. It's like fully from like one end to the other of like things that you can see. I think it's like 22 miles long.
Yeah, it's really long.
It's really long. And so the nice thing is they do run shuttles from the visitor center. So which is where basically the parking lots are. The shuttles are able to take you sort of like anywhere along that span. We kind of did this thing when we got to the canyon or as we were driving where we're like, listen, this is like, there's only, I think this was you. You're like, there's only one time that we're going to be able to see the Grand Canyon for the first time. So like, let's not look until we get to the spot that we are going to start
where
hiking,
we can really see it
and where we can take it in. Because when you get there, you can sort of see the idea of the canyon in the distance, but like it's far enough away and the angle that you're on the earth, you can't really see that much of it. And the visitor center blocks it.
You're coming in at rim level, and you're not coming in at canyon level.
Right.
Which is like Zion, you're as you approach it, you're in it and you see it.
Yeah.
Same with like Capitol Reef.
Yep.
And then I would kind of say, I mean, Bryce is you're a little more at rim level, though.
Bryce is sort of like at rim level because we had to really walk up to get to...
and then you have to walk down in.
Yeah.
Though Bryce is not nearly as steep.
No.
But like, it's a little harder to do this at Bryce Canyon because what we're doing as far as like keeping our eyes closed and then open.
Right.
Only because like it's smaller and it, you know. But anyway, at Grand Canyon, I think somebody told me to do that. They were like, take a moment and don't look until you like get off the shuttle at the spot that you want to get off at, and then take your moment.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was really about, just taking a moment.
Right. Reclaiming my time.
Can a woman get a moment?
So we decided we were going to go all the way out to the end, which is Hermit's Rest. And you can't get there just on one shuttle bus. So we get on the one bus that takes us to the stop that'll get us on the red line, take us out to Hermit's Rest. And I think we looked at the floor the entire time.
Yeah, we were looking at the floor and looking away.
Turned our back to
there was a lot of this.
There was a lot of holding our hands over our faces. A lot of people,
and meanwhile, everybody is looking out the windows like, "Oh my God, there it is!" And we're like, "We're not doing it yet. We're not doing it yet."
No, I think I just remember changing buses was a little bit. Although I think there was stuff in the way.
Look down,
but it was just like look down at the ground and don't look up.
Turn around. Yep. Now look at the parking lot.
Right. And so we're able to get on to this final bus that's going to take us out. And I think in total, it probably took us, with buses and waiting time for them to come, probably like somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes to get all the way out to that end, which is about like a 9. I think it was like 9 or 10 miles from the visitor center all the way out to Hermit's Rest. So it maybe even was longer than that. It was a pretty lengthy period of time. And when we get off here, there weren't too many people that got off with us. Like, I don't remember like leaving mass exodus. There were other points where more people got off the buses. I just remember like sort of being like, okay, are we going to do this? Mm-hmm. And we sort of like took a giant breath.
We did. We got off.
Yeah.
We were like, okay, with our hand in front of our forehead like a visor. And we were like, okay, we're standing here and then we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And we took a breath and then we looked up.
And with that, let's take our next break. Ladies and gentlethems, it's time for Drag Corner.
Please welcome to the stage,
Phasia Fears.
All right. I have actually some very clear thoughts about Phasia Fears.
Okay.
I think
you've been dwelling on her.
Phasia Fears is actually like her act is like exposure therapy to a bunch of common like
phobias.
Yeah.
Phobias,
right?
Phobia.
Like, I think she'll have snakes that are, handled by actual animal handlers, right? But maybe she won't like have real snakes, but she might have a snake look or like fake snakes, or she might do like rats or bugs or like there's all these different looks that she has about, things that people are afraid of.
Do you feel like she could do something similar to the Great Muppet Caper ride or the Bugs Life ride, where you're in a theater with 3D glasses, and also
certainly
things are happening under your chair and stuff like that. Like, I feel like that's sort of part of the shtick of it all.
Yeah, but it's a drag queen, so I kind of am like, I don't want there to be too much budget. Like,
yeah,
I feel like drag always like definitely have a ton of budget in like lights and you know, like that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the gimmicks, I'm just like, I always find drag gimmicks to be so much more exciting and fun when they're like creative and so cheap.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how do we it would be like, hey everybody, we left out old food in the audience, so there are gonna be bugs around, just letting you know, like that kind of thing.
Right. I love that. I feel like there's a lot of if we're gonna say lighting, I feel like she does a lot with projection. And it maybe it's more, maybe if we can't do the budget of, like, you know, the Bugs Life ride in Animal Kingdom, maybe it's more the Willy Wonka tunnel.
I love that. But it's a different.
Oh yeah,
she's saying different things.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so here for that. I need somebody to do that, and I need it to be Facia Fierce.
Yeah. I feel like maybe her song that she lip syncs to is Disturbia by Rihanna.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's a good call. That is a very good call. And it's like really off-putting. Like the whole thing. You know, like it reminds me of like when Beyonce did that one show, I think it was at the American Music Awards, when she had like she did it against that screen that like they were all like, it was, she performed with the screen and then there were suddenly like a bunch of her on the screen, and then it was, that could be really fun. Like I envision like Disturbia as some kind of like kind of almost like performance art moment about what is fear.
Yeah.
Oh, I dig that. Oh, I love that. Her merch is just like maybe like
creepy crawlers.
It could be creepy crawlers, or like her merch is, when you buy her merch, you also make a donation to mental health resources for people who are, you know, actually really facing fear.
Yeah. I love that. Great. So I think we've rounded her out pretty well.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage,
Facia Fierce. What did you initially see and feel in this moment?
I believe the thing I said out loud was, this is the largest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I'm pretty sure.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, nothing compares to it. It was absolutely the most gigantic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like a moment of total stillness, total silence. I'm so glad that we actually did that thing where we didn't look and that we took this moment, because this moment is something I'll never forget.
Yeah.
I can envision the entire picture. I have a very clear picture. So much color. Like, I remember what the light was like. It was really special. I hold it very close in my heart. You can only see it for the first time one time.
Right.
And so I really do feel like it was very special. But it was so vast.
Yeah.
It was so vast, and like, talk about, like, it made me feel extremely small.
Yeah.
In a way that was wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I think I took away the most, is its vastness, and it's just the scale of everything, and just thinking about how large it is, how wide across it is, how deep it is, everything, and then all of the colors. Like, and the thing that was cool initially, but as we were walking along the canyon, was how everything changed with the light, and how the light really affected how that canyon looked, and how just the different time of day really made an impact on the color and the shadowing and everything. And so that was really fascinating to me as an artist, just to be able to see all that. It's one of those things, you're right, it didn't cheapen it by any means, waiting. Like, I'm really glad that we waited to take a look at it, because it is one of those things you never get to see for the first time ever again. Maybe from the North Rim, I'm sure it's a different experience.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to go to the North Rim.
Yeah, kind of have the same experience of like keeping our eyes shut.
I would like to do that.
Yeah. So we kind of take a little bit of time here to just like breathe it all in, which is something we do obviously all the time when we're out and when we're kind of in a park. But this is sort of like, there is so much visually to just digest. And so we definitely took more time, I think, than we usually do sitting and just sort of like internalizing everything.
Now, the plan was to actually hike about almost 13 miles from what we call Hermit's Rest, which is where we were standing in this moment, all the way to the South Kaibab Trailhead, which was kind of at the very other end of the South Rim.
Right. There is
and
a
by
little
the
bit,
very other end, I mean...
the walkable other end.
The walkable other end, right? And so that was the plan. We were like, okay, great, because we really wanted to do a long walk. And we were like, let's do it. We're going to be along the rim trail. This feels like the thing to do.
Yeah. All you have is impressive scenery off to your left as you're walking back towards the visitor center. So it's not a bad view, really, at all.
No.
And you do get some like jut offs here and there and these points of interest where you're able to kind of like get off the main. It's sort of like a macadam, so like a paved sidewalk. You're able to get off that main part and like jut off onto like a loop or like a little jut out to see a little bit more.
Or a parallel, like I say wilderness trail, like a footpath that's going along like in the, natural trail.
Yes.
Though, can I just say, when we were doing this walk, there were these people who would just be like, oh, I'm going to go like sit on this rock that's just like protruding out into the canyon and take a photograph. And I'm like, stupid. Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah.
That's how people fall into the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And I am not making a joke about that.
That
is how people fall into the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And it's not smart. And so I was just like, I really don't think that's a good idea. Like, playing mom from the side, because it's like, come on, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, get with the program. Like, that isn't smart to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to lie. My fear of heights was like
triggered.
I was
You're like, I'm going to walk on the right side of you.
going back and forth from like feeling totally nauseous to feeling like moderately all right.
Yeah.
But feeling like super amazing. Like, I mean, if you stay on that, sidewalk the whole time, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like, you're far enough away from everything. Yeah. But it was mainly on those like
footpaths,
wilderness footpaths next door to those.
Everything that like the red line had taken us out from on the bus. This is where there's a lot of stops along the way. So like, this is where we see a lot of people get off to take photos and then like turn right back around and wait for the bus to kind of like move along. So I think there is that sort of culture there where it is sort of like okay, I'm going to stop here and take some pictures. Okay, I'm going to move on and take some pictures, which is fine. This is also a section where there's biking. That is very prevalent. There were a lot of people that were biking around us as we were walking. So it's something like sometimes we did end up jutting off onto that, like more of that natural footpath to just like get away from that, because it's not a very wide paved sidewalk or a paved like pathway. There were definitely times where it was like easier to just kind of jump off of it if we could.
So as we were walking along the South Rim Trail, we eventually intersect with the trailhead for the Bright Angel Trail. This is the trail that you would take if from the South Rim you wanted to go to the bottom of the canyon and then hike back up. But remember, the Grand Canyon is gigantic.
Yep.
So it's a matter of getting to the bottom of it and getting back up in a day is not advised.
Yeah.
Unless you're very prepared.
Yeah.
And they even say for those who are very prepared, it's still not advised.
Yes.
Because you will run out of water.
Yeah.
We were like, okay, there it is. And you could see that people were heading off down the Bright Angel Trail.
Back up.
Yeah, and they were coming up the Bright Angel Trail. But it wasn't that people were like intending to go the whole way. It was like, let me just like walk down this trail for a little bit.
And this is like all steep
switchbacks.
Right.
I think we did 3 of them, and then we were like, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
Because like when you look, you can see you're like, oh, I have to do like many, 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 many more of these.
Yes.
To get anywhere that looks and feels a little different than where I am right now.
And I think part of it too was like, it's not so much of just hiking down to the canyon level. It's then if you want to get to the Colorado River, you have to walk across this entire like plain essentially.
Yes.
Which we could see people hiking out like in the distance. Like when we were on the switchbacks, you could see like this trail that was cut like all the way down to the Colorado. And you could see people in the distance. So it's more of like you also have to cross that and then hike down to the river from there. So it's a lot. So we definitely were like, well, maybe we'll go to the bottom here and then come back up. And then we were both like, no.
We got about like maybe a third of the way.
Yeah.
And we were like, I could turn around.
Yeah.
We're continuing walking and we're walking along the rim trail. We know the goal is to get to
the South Kaibab
Trail. Now, there are a bunch of like different points along the way that you can like stop into, which I was thrilled about.
Right. This is like right after the Bright Angel Trailhead. We hit like the village as it's called.
Yeah. So there are all these like lovely spots along the way that you can stop at.
Yeah, there's all these stores and shops and like hotels within the village. And it does have this kind of like, it feels very theme park-esque in its sort of layout and the fact that the canyon is right there. This is also this is where we start to see more crowd. Like it isn't as crowded by any means in the Hermit Rests part of the trail. But once you hit the village, it's kind of like, this is where it gets a little crazy with people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people there.
It is really, really nice to be able to like walk through this and also have like a little bit of a respite, because at this point we'd already done something like 7 miles, like from Hermit's Rest to the village. It's about a 7-mile walk, which we had done like a pretty lengthy leg of what we had planned to do already. We had done basically more than half. So we had
done more than half. I remember getting there and I was like, we could rest for a little bit here. Did we eat? I don't remember.
I think we just like had snacks and stuff like that.
I'm sure we had
which
something.
is like our typical venture.
Right. But I think we did sit on rocks or something and eat.
Yeah, we did.
And look out at Grand Canyon while we ate snacks.
And people watched because this was the section to do that in.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots of people with kids that they're just like, you can walk right up to the edge, it's fine. And I'm just like hyperventilating for everyone over here.
Yep.
After leaving Grand Canyon Village, we continue on the South Rim Trail
towards the Yavapai Point and Geology Museum. On our way there is this interpretive trail, which is called the Trail of Time, which is actually really great. There are these like geologically cut pieces of stone that show the different levels of sediment in the canyon and the different layers of stone and how over time those have changed. So they're actually these kind of like cut signboards out of stone that also have some information like on placards. Basically just explains the geological change of the canyon over time. So this is kind of like also something to sort of occupy our brains as we've been hiking for some time. Obviously we're just chatting and playing trail games, but it was kind of nice to have this as well, as sort of like a informational distraction like point for us.
So we continue on the South Rim Trail, and then we do eventually get to this geology museum that is right there on the South Rim. I loved this because it was also like an extension of what we had just learned on this interpretive trail.
Right.
And all of the things that we had seen and all of the, new info we had gathered. It was a nice sort of indoor spot to just like sit and rest, but they also had this spectacular elevated like view of the canyon from inside. And it was every time you turn to the left, it's just like the biggest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. I remember there being like a pretty cool like wall in the museum that had like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a great sort of exhibit similar to the giant tree museum in Sequoia, where it was just like this well done like museum exhibit wall of like stuff related to the geology in the canyon. This was like a study a few years after, but there was a rock that was in this museum that had like uranium in it. Like, and I pretty sure that it was recently removed because it actually was giving off like some low grade radiation. And there was like
Whoops.
concern about how many people were exposed over time and what it was like for the employees that worked there. So that was like some interesting NPS news a few years ago, I think. But I'm pretty sure it was there when we were there. So,
well,
you know, my superpowers have developed.
Yep.
And I just haven't told anybody at this point yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine have too.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point in the day, I remember I was feeling
The
done.
wall had come.
The wall had hit, and I was like, I feel like I've gotten a strong sense of the Grand Canyon.
Right.
We've done a lot.
Yep.
We've
We've
walked
seen
a lot.
Yeah.
But now we're dealing with the fact that like, but again, this is early.
In our travels.
This is
and
early in
hiking
our
together.
travels, so we're still negotiating sort of like what's our own culture for adjusting plans, which now I would describe our culture for adjusting plans are like plans are great and then we see how we feel and we adjust as we go.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and we're always just transparent.
Yeah.
But this is where we were both sort of like still towing the line of like, what can I suggest and what can I not suggest?
Right. But I'm over here also having the same thoughts like, oh, this is really great, but I could just go back now. I'm tired.
I could just go back. No, right. So
I think I like turned to you at one point and I was like, wow, this has been such a great like adventure today. And then we both turned to each other and we're like, but I think we could go home now, right? Like we're ready to leave, right?
we did say
and
that
like
at
laughed
the
about it.
same time.
Yeah.
Because it did happen right after this geology museum.
I think we were just burnt out.
We were
from
so burned out. And
the
we
whole
were,
like 9 days that we were away.
and again, we
yeah.
walked like,
Yeah.
what, 9 miles at this point?
Yeah.
I know the plan is to walk beyond the visitor center because we're basically parked at the visitor center.
Yeah.
But, you know, if we don't walk beyond the visitor center, that's okay with me. And then you were like, oh, God, thank God you said that. Yes. It was like, oh, good, great.
Yeah.
And that was just like, to me, it like further confirming, like, I'm like, okay, if I'm feeling it, he's feeling it.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. So we basically make our way to the visitor center because it's the one thing we hadn't done at this point. I just remember the gift shop being very impressive at the visitor center, but I don't remember them being, it wasn't like a lot of other visitor centers that have museum exhibits and things like that. At least I don't remember seeing it. Maybe we just avoided it because we were so burnt out.
I think also because the visitor center and the gift shop were different buildings.
Right.
This gift shop was created by the Grand Canyon Conservancy.
Oh, okay, that's it.
And so when you buy something in there, they ask you, would you like to round it up to the next dollar?
Right.
And that can be a donation to the Grand Canyon Conservancy because that's their nonprofit partner.
Right. So we got a few things in there. We got our badges there as we typically do. And then we sort of like poked around like minimally after that. Essentially, we're like, okay, Grand Canyon, you were beautiful. And just got in the car and left.
We did.
And we talked a lot about like...
We talked a lot about expectation.
Right.
It certainly is grand.
And it sure is a canyon.
You can never take that from it. Speaking of expectation, we had spent all week hiking things.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that, I mean, I think if you're listening to this podcast by this time, you realize this like a centerpiece to the kind of traveling that we do.
Yeah.
We love getting on our feet and hiking long distances.
Mm-hmm.
So like to us, like hiking in and around a canyon for, I'm talking about Bryce Canyon, like a full 17 miles in a day is sure exhausting, but like kind
Thrilling.
of par for the
Yeah.
course and thrilling for us, things we love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember feeling like, remember when we were at Canyonlands and there was, like, we ended up doing a couple of hikes in Canyonlands. But Canyonlands ended up being more of like, it didn't have a ton of hikes in it.
Well, it was also just incredibly vast.
And
you
it was
know?
very
in the islands in the
vast.
sky section we were in. Anyway, we didn't see all
Right.
the
We
sections,
didn't
yeah.
get to go to the Needles. I felt a little similar at the Grand Canyon, at least on the South Rim.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like, if I wanted to travel to inside of the canyon, I'd have to go down the Bright Angel Trail, which is a ton of switchbacks.
Yeah.
And at the time, we chose not to.
Yeah.
Because we certainly could have said, like, let's just go down all the switchbacks and hike out, you know, across the, you know, the plains there for a little bit and then come back. We
Sure.
could have done that.
Sure.
But we also knew that we didn't want to sign up for doing hundreds of switchbacks.
Right. There was
because
also...
we were tired.
Yeah, there was also the potential and things we talked about in the car ride back of, do we come back tomorrow before we have to head to Las Vegas? Because honestly, leaving from Flagstaff and then driving to the canyon and then leaving from the canyon and heading to Las Vegas is essentially the same time travel that you would take you to get, which is odd, but it's true.
You mean from
the canyon or from Flagstaff? It's the same amount of time to get to Las Vegas.
It's the same amount of time. Yeah.
So we kind of were like, what do we do? Do we go back? And I think we were just like, well, what would we do if we go back? Like, we can't really hike down today because we really are racing a flight. And so I think we kind of were like, I think that experience is something that we will save for another time when we can adequately do it and adequately do it in a way where we're not feeling rushed. And I think today's experience was not a letdown by any means, but I think it was a different sort of finish than we thought it would be. And I don't think, looking back on it now, I think I was a little disappointed, but looking back on it now, I think it was actually kind of a gift in that we had really like thrown our bodies to the wolves that week. We hiked something like 3.5 marathons. Like, think about that. That week,
certainly.
Like, so I think this was sort of like, you're going to walk a flat trail along a beautiful, incredibly vast piece of geological splendor. Like, just take it for what it's worth. And like,
yeah,
it was worth a lot.
We're not going to put the rim trail on the Karen Stone scale because it's a flat rim trail that is paved.
Yeah.
So there you are, everyone. We are now going to move into our Jeopardy style trivia that we end all of our full length episodes with.
That's right.
All right. So who is going to start today?
I can start.
All right.
My Jeopardy is called You Can Fit That in There. And this is all about things that you could fit into the Grand Canyon to fill it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm here for this category.
All right. For 100. The number of this ovular Friday Night Lights piece of equipment that could fit inside the Grand Canyon is about 900 trillion.
Is it footballs?
Yes, it is. It's footballs. There you go. Look at you being a good kid. I don't know what that means. For 200. About 4 million of this iconic New York landmark, which graces the movie poster for Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, could fit inside the Grand Canyon.
What is the Empire State Building?
That's correct. For 300, the entirety of this, the Ocean State, could fit inside the Grand Canyon with about 700 square miles to spare.
What is Rhode Island?
That's correct. You are on fire.
Really? The
Yes.
whole state of Rhode Island can fit inside of the Grand Canyon? I did not know that. Okay.
If you took the entirety, for 400, if you took the entirety of the Orinoco, the Yukon, and the Tigris, and all of the rest of the world's these, and added them into the Grand Canyon, it would still only be about half full.
What are rivers?
Correct. You are blazing trails today.
Okay. Great.
And lastly, 500, barring the fact that water of the canyon erodes and deepens it, it would take this famous falls, which flows about 2,400 cubic meters of water per second, about 69 years to fill the canyon completely.
What is Niagara Falls?
You are correct. You got a clean sweep, girl.
That was the clean sweep.
Look at you.
That was a good category.
Thank you.
Fun category.
That was fun.
Are you ready for mine?
I am.
It's time for Grand Canyon word morph.
Oh, beautiful.
It's a word morph category.
It's a word morph.
All right. So I will say this. It's a word morph, which means in this case, they all rhyme.
Okay.
So there's that.
Okay.
And it's not just one word sometimes. Sometimes it's a phrase.
Okay.
Most of the time it's a phrase.
Okay.
Okay, great. Ready for 100. If this famous New York-based used bookstore opened a location at this Arizona National Park, it might be called this.
What's the Strand Canyon?
Correct. For 200. If this Arizona National Park opened a consignment store, it might be called this.
What's the Brand Canyon?
Incorrect. Not brand canyon. Consignment. What is consignment? If you sell something on consignment.
You're selling it second-hand canyon.
You nailed it. You got it. Yes. Okay. For 300. Given that the Grand Canyon is featured on most everything in the gift store, one could argue that the name of the Grand Canyon gift store could be this.
The Brand Canyon.
What is
the Brand Canyon?
What is on brand
What
canyon?
is on brand canyon?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Okay, great. For 400. This Arizona National Park, if it were known as a place to go when you really needed to consider the other side of an argument.
What is the other hand canyon?
Yes. What is on the other hand canyon? Correct. Okay. And then finally for 500. You're also nailing this category. This Arizona National Park, if it became a known gathering place for magicians.
What is the sleight of hand canyon?
That's correct. This has been Gaze at the National Parks, the podcast. We're here to remind you to hike early and hike often, and that adventure is always out there.
Gaze at the National Parks was created and is hosted by Dustin Ballard and Michael Ryan.
To see images from this episode, follow our Instagram at Gaze at the National Parks. To contact us, email us at gazeatthenationalparks@gmail.com. And to find out more about the parks visited on this show, visit our website, gazeatthenationalparks.com. That's Gaze, G-A-Z-E.
All original artwork featured on Instagram and on our website is by Michael Ryan.
All original music was created by Dave Seaman and performed by Dave Seaman, Mariella Klinger, and Sean Sklios. Our music producer is Skyler Fortgang.
This episode was edited by Dustin Ballard. We would also like to acknowledge that while recording this episode, that we were on the traditional and stolen lands of the Lenape people, also known as Ocean County, New Jersey.